Picking up where we left off, so how common are some of these infections? We're on to our bloodborne forms of infectious hepatitis. So hepatitis B, according to the CDC in 2017, there were a little bit over 3,400 new cases. Um, um, and it's a little bit different with hepatitis B. Um, if you get the infection, and when I got the numbers, I didn't break down um, who got the number, who got infected when. But if you get exposed as a baby, about 90% of infants will go on to have chronic disease, about 50% of children, and about 10% of adults. So what that tells you is if you get exposed in utero or at birth, chances are that you're going to wind up with a chronic form of hepatitis versus as you get older, your chances of going on to have chronic hepatitis start going down. For hepatitis C, there's also about 3,400 known new cases of 2017. But in this case, a vast majority of those cases go on to become chronic. I did not see a breakdown according to age on this one. Hepatitis D, and you saw this when I lumped them at the beginning, only affects people who have hepatitis B. If you get hepatitis D by itself, you're not going to go on to have hepatitis. You'll get it, you'll be done with it. If you have hepatitis B and D at the same time, and specifically if you get hepatitis B first and then get hepatitis D, you are much more likely to get very, very sick. If you get B and D simultaneously, you're a lot more likely to recover. And that's interesting. And again, you're dealing with a pediatrician here and not somebody who's a hepatologist or an infectious disease expert. Do not fully understand why myself. How common are these? Continued autoimmune hepatitis. As far as how many people actually have this in the United States, not fully known. Did see some data that in parts of Europe, perhaps 1 in 2 out of 10,000 people have this. So maybe as much as 1 in 5,000. So not super duper common, but also not, oh my God, completely unheard of. In the bad luck category, NASH, non-alcoholic steatohepatitis. About 30 to 40% of adults in the United States have fatty liver disease, which is the precursor to getting NASH. And about 3 to 12% of those people will go on to go have NASH. So if you do the math, 35% and 5%, take the midpoints, get some easy numbers. So 35% of 210 million adults, that's 73.5 million. And then another 5% of 73.5 million is 3.7 million adults in the United States at some point in their lifetime will go on to have NASH. Now, that does not mean everybody goes on to have liver failure or, horrible livers, but that just gives you an idea of, how often somebody in the US would have an inflamed liver because of this. And then alcohol-induced hepatitis. It's hard to say because a lot of people aren't going to honestly self-report something that is induced by a habit. So this does happen in about a third of chronic drinkers. A majority of people that go on to have alcohol-induced hepatitis will go on to have fibrotic livers at some point in their lifetimes. So again, exact numbers are a little bit hard to come by. But if you go on to have alcohol, if you are a chronic drinker, and you wind up having alcohol-induced hepatitis, there's a good chance that you're going to wind up having cirrhosis and then developing liver failure at some point in your lifetime. And we will pick up from there in part 3.